Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Morning.
Morning.
In position, at the ready, and on location.
On location.
Yeah.
Sky high, right?
Yes, sir. With Coach's group. Looking forward to speaking to him this morning. Did a little bit last night, and great crowd, bunch of doers. You'd all be very, very comfortable with them, folks. You need to get to know them. We're doers here, folks. We're doers here. But sometimes we say things that might be misunderstood. So, Mr. Anderson, if you would, real quick, go through our disclaimer.
You are about to listen to 2 hours of opinion and entertainment supplied by Last Call Radio. We are not doctors, lawyers, politicians, professional journalists, nor do either of us hold a doctorate degree in anything. Not that that would really make any difference this day and age. Our opinion, of course. We only ask that you, as an individual and or corporately, not take our statements or those that we voice from others personal, nor do we recommend that you act on them as if they were facts, although they might very well be just that, facts. But that is our opinion. You are not required to listen to or act on or repeat anything that you might hear today, and that any information or opinion we present is meant for the good of the order and by no means intended to harm or threaten anyone.
The Father Effect this morning, folks. The Father Effect this morning. Incredible movie. It's in line with Father's Day, which is the last day of our last week of our celebration. And while you're all taking your seats for a matinee, I got a quick message. First of all, this Flag Day, it's the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army as well, of which I was a proud member many, many, many years ago. Mr. Anderson, there are protests all throughout the U.S. this Flag Day Saturday. Many of us.
There's a lot going on everywhere. It's hard
many
to say.
saying many, this is no King Day, and I think we'd all agree, right? No King Day. Wait, what? What do you mean no King Day? Yeah, that's indeed true, because there's no king but King Jesus.
Amen.
Can you imagine somebody standing out there with a yellow sign? It'll stand out saying no king but King Jesus. Or how about judge not? I mean, that's what they're doing to the president. That's what they're doing to anybody that tries to do anything. They take him to court. This guy has been in court and been accused since day one of his first presidency. I'm just stating facts here, folks.
You wonder who really is wearing the crown, the judge or the president?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, seriously. Mother, may I? Well, I'd like to do this, but wait a minute, hold on. Let me check with the judge, because they were elected and they represent. Well, wait a minute. They weren't elected and they don't represent the people, do they?
No, not at all.
Hmm.
They're supposed to represent the Constitution.
Yeah, their interpretation gets a little.
It gets fuzzy, yeah.
Yeah, questionable. Maybe they should read our disclaimer before they make a judgment. What do you think?
Maybe. Well, I don't want them having. I want them responsible for their decisions.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. How about a little history?
Amen.
Huh?
To the democracy?
Yeah.
Which it stands? Oh, wait a minute. Good morning, folks. Maybe we have some responsibility here.
Yeah, there's a seat over there. There's a seat. Yeah, there's a seat over on the end. Yeah, go ahead. They're still sitting in the studio, Mr. Anderson. So I'm gonna go ahead and explain about the flag. A little history, and this is thanks to Bill Federer. 13 stars and 13 stripes. It was on June 14th, 1777. You know, it's just an accident that Donald Trump was born on Flag Day, wasn't it? Anyway, June, and he wasn't born in 1777. Okay. On June 14th, 1777, the Second Continental Congress selected the flag of the United States of America. Our founders were in the midst of fighting an 8-year-long war to come out from under the domination of the most powerful globalist king in world history. First, I give my heart and my hand to my country, one language, one flag. In 1885, that was the first version of the Pledge of Allegiance written by Union Army Captain George Thacher Balch, a veteran of the Civil War. Balch became auditor of the New York City Board of Education. This gets interesting, where he authorized methods and teachings patriotism in public schools. In 1890, he was largely responsible for flagpoles being placed in front of public schools. That pledge was revised in 1892 by 36-year-old Baptist minister Francis Bellamy, who was ordained in the Baptist Church of Little Falls, New York. Let the nation's flag float over every schoolhouse in the country, and the exercises to be such as shall impress upon our youth the patriotic duties of American citizenship. Let there be expressions of gratitude to divine providence. In 1916, President Woodrow Wilson designated June 14th as National Flag Day. In 1954, the Knights of Columbus led a campaign to add one nation under God to the pledge, resulting in Congress passing Public Law 396. On Flag Day, June 14th, 1954, President Dwight Eisenhower signed into law on Flag Day, June 14th, 1954, Section 7, this is a law. The following is designated as the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I'm thinking about what's happening in Los Angeles with flags and what's going to happen all over the United States with flags.
Oh, my.
A long way, baby. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic. What's a republic? For which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Such pledge should be rendered by standing with the right hand over the heart. However, civilians will always show full respect to the flag when the pledge is given by merely standing at attention. I don't see a lot of that in Los Angeles either. Men removing their headdress, their mask. Persons in uniform shall render the military salute. President Eisenhower stood on the steps of the Capitol building and recited the revised Pledge of Allegiance for the first time. And there you have it, folks. That's what this is all about. Pledge allegiance to the flag. One nation.
Under God.
Under God. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You know, when you come into a country, you need to assimilate. You assimilate in the United States, not to Islam, not to any other religions other than Christianity. Otherwise, you're not assimilating. And biblically, folks, if you didn't do that with a country, out the door you went. Hey, I'm excited for the movie, Mr. Anderson. Let's take a break and then get back to the movie. And thank you all for tuning in today. You're going to love this movie, folks. This is so telling. Fathers are so critical in a child's life and therefore critical in our nation. Natural Family Month, Mother's Day through Father's Day. Loving the family. Natural family.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with BJ Edwards.
When I grow up.
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 I want to be just like my dad. I want to be just like my dad.
I want to be just like my dad.
I want to marry a man just like my dad.
I want to be just like my dad.
When I grow up, I want to be just like my dad.
When I grow up, I want to be angry, absent,
a drug addict,
an alcoholic,
physically and verbally abusive,
a workaholic,
controlling,
selfish, unfaithful to my wife,
just like my dad.
When I grow up, I want to abandon my son, just like my dad.
When I grow up,
I want to abandon my daughter, just like my dad.
When I grow up, I want to be
just like my dad.
When I grow up, I want to be
just like my dad.
Just like my dad.
Just like my
just
dad.
Like my
just
dad.
like my dad.
My name is John Finch, and this is my story. This isn't just my story, but it is the story of millions in the past and in the present. Our goal in making this film is to help change the story for those living today and for the generations of those yet to come. If someone would have told me a few years ago that I would be the dad and husband I am today, I would have said that's impossible and my life would never change. It's amazing how God steps into our lives, makes the impossible possible, and changes us in ways we can never imagine.
It's so cloudy.
I was never prepared to be a father. I had no idea how hard it would be, or how heavy the responsibility would feel. You know, it doesn't seem right to have that much influence over one small life. The way they look up to you, and how easy it is to let them down. Maybe if my dad had been there, it would have been easier. But he wasn't. I grew up most of my life without a father. I can remember his face, but I can't remember a life with him. The last time I saw him, it was on a school day. He was always gone in the mornings, but for some reason he was able to drop me off that day. He even gave me a kiss. I will never forget that day. It was so cloudy. I was in 5th grade, and that day I remember we were watching a movie, so it was kind of a special day. I was sitting on top of my desk, and the vice principal walks up the stairs, comes over to me and says that I needed to go to the principal's office, and I remember thinking it was pretty unusual because I was a good kid and had never been to the principal's office. So I walk into the principal's office, and there was our pastor, and he didn't say much other than, "John, we need to go to your home." And so there was this half a mile stretch between the school and my home, which seemed to be 100 miles long. And as soon as I pulled up to the apartment, I saw my mom out on the balcony, very distraught. I could tell even from that distance she had been crying, and it was then that I knew something was terribly wrong. I just remember several times just stopping and looking up and it just being so gloomy and just so overcast. And realizing, that my life would never be the same without my dad. I have replayed that day in my mind a million times. If I would have been a better son, if my dad would have known how much he really meant to me, if I had told someone about the gun I found just a few weeks before that day, maybe my life would have been different. After my dad died, I was lost, bitter, confused, and fearful. I felt inadequate and lacked confidence that I could ever measure up to the expectations of others. Because of my dad's decision to take his own life, I struggled with guilt that it was something I had done, shame because I thought most people were whispering, "There's the boy whose dad killed himself." And I struggled with anger and rejection because my dad chose to leave me. Just a few years ago, my mom was telling me about a conversation we had right after my dad died. She said that she told me I could ask her anything about my father. She would tell me the truth. She said I responded, "I don't want to know anything about my dad." Seeing friends with their dads really made me feel like I was missing out on something that I should have had. I felt abandoned and deeply betrayed. For many years after my dad died, I had a dream that I saw my dad out somewhere at a grocery store or a gas station, and that he wasn't dead. I think it was just that longing deep down that all this stuff that had happened with my father wasn't true, that he had not really died, that he had not killed himself, that he hadn't committed suicide and left me and my mom and brothers to live on our own. My mom was the most amazing and loving mom anyone could ever ask for. But as much as she wanted and tried to be a father, she could not. She simply didn't know how and didn't have the tools to be a dad.
No boy ever knows he's a man until a father tells him. A woman can't tell you. I mean, she can tell you, but it won't make sense to you. And until a father looks you in the eye and says, "I declare you're a man," you will always be trying to find that affirmation. And so until a father says, "You're my son in whom I'm well pleased," you'll always be on a futile search for your identity.
Fatherless generation, moms trying their best, feeling guilty that they're not doing enough for their son, so they have to whitewash it and pretend, well, I'm covering the bases for my son, I'm being a father for my son. No. This is called addictive denial. When a society believes that a mother can do the job of an absent father, or a father in any case, that's addiction. And if we don't face up to the truth and say, no woman can bring a boy into manhood, no matter how kind, religious, Christian, gentle, cheerful, brave, clean, and reverent, no woman can bring a boy into manhood. Until we face that, we're not going to face our wound.
One of the greatest things that we can tell single moms especially, or moms where the dad's kind of checked out, physically present, but in every other way absent, is you don't have to be dad. You can't be dad, okay? You get to be mom, right? That little boy or that little girl needs the father influence, and that can come from uncles and coaches and teachers and pastors and mentors and youth leaders. You can find the kind of male influence that you need, but to put that pressure on mom, right, is a crushing load. It's enough to be mom. Like, mom is a full-time job. Mom is all she's got. And if she feels like she's got to be both mom and dad, I mean, it just becomes brittle, it's exhausting, it can't be done, right? And so the first big kind of relief is you don't have to. You don't have to be mom and dad.
As I entered high school, I became more bitter and angry, understanding just how much I needed my dad's advice about school, girls, sports, and many other things. As a result, I started drinking to escape, a habit that would prove to be an issue for most of my adult life. I was suffering from a hurt so deeply rooted in me that I needed something to help me cover up the pain and fill the void. In college, I was the life of the party, and it got me the attention I'd been craving for so many years. Attention from others that I thought would somehow finally affirm me as a man. Because I did not have a dad walking alongside me, giving me guidance and direction, I was desperately looking for any and all signs that told me I had what it takes to be a man.
Every little boy growing up has two essential needs from his dad. He needs to know that his dad adores him. He needs to know, I love you. That's core. That comes first. That's the base for everything else. That's the foundation that everything else in the boy's life is built on. I love you. I am the apple of my dad's eye. He needs to know that. And he needs to know from his father, son, you have what it takes. See, that's the question every little boy has. Do I have what it takes? Will I be a man? Right? Can I come through? And so through the story of his life, through the tender years, the teenage years, on into young manhood, every man craves this. These two things, love and validation, okay? Delight from the father and affirmation. The power of a father to bestow identity is extraordinary. It is, the father-son relationship is the most powerful relationship on the earth, because in the story that we live in, the father-son relationship is the most powerful relationship in the universe, because there is a father and there is a son. Okay? So this is where the wounding comes in. If that little boy does not get from his father, you are my delight. If he gets something much worse than that, he may get silence, he may get abandonment, he might get violence. If he does not hear from his father, you have what it takes. That's where the father wound comes in. Okay, in those two places, in love and validation, delight and affirmation, if the boy gets wounded there from his father, it will define him for the rest of his life until he deals with it.
As a young salesman in my 20s traveling the country, I had bought into all that the world tells you should be as a real man. Make lots of money, drive a really nice car, have a fancy job title, a big house, and I could drink a lot of beer. As a result, I spent the next 20 years trying to create a false persona of the man who I wanted people to think that I was. I believed the lies that society tells you. I couldn't admit that I had an issue or a struggle because it would make me look weak or somehow less of a man.
A lot of men hold their cards close to their chest, so to speak. They don't want you to see their weaknesses. They don't want to, because they've been bullied maybe, or they know that men take advantage of their weaknesses in business and courtship or whatever. Well, there's something about the testosterone in men that makes them very competitive like that. But their fear is that if I let you see my weakness, you'll use it against me.
Well, men struggle at being good fathers because they don't know what a good father is supposed to be. They haven't been taught. You can only give what you have. And so most of us as men, not having been taught properly, just do what we kind of think is right. It seems kind of right, but not sure if it's right, but well, heck with it. I don't have time to do anything else. Let's do this.
As a father, I was scared I would end up just like my dad, always struggling financially to make ends meet and not living past the age of 42. As much as I did not want to be like my dad, I was. I was selfish, always focused on making money and being successful, and a salesman who spent a lot of time away from home. I was a fraud, and I was living a lie. At home with neighbors and friends, I pretended to be a great husband and father. And I felt as long as I took my wife and kids to church, I was doing a pretty good job as a dad. But Because I grew up in church, I knew how to play the game and just what to say, convincing people that I was a good Christian who read his Bible every day.
I am not the man that they think I am. That's the first thought that comes into these men. I am not who they think I am. But I'm afraid for them to find out. So because I'm afraid for them to find out the real person, I'm going to control my relationships, and I'm never going to really be vulnerable and transparent. So we learn to live with this goofy church mask on, pretending that everything is okay when we know it's not. But we can't imagine us really telling the truth, because then we would be exposed, so we start posing. I think that's the culture that most of us find ourselves in the local church. The safest place to fail should be the local church. The safest place to be truthful should be the local church. When in fact, it's the most dangerous place to fail in most cases, and it's the most dangerous place to tell the truth, because the penalty for telling the truth in most churches is you get ostracized. You get labels put on you. So you're 50 years old and you're struggling with porn? What the heck? What are you doing? What's happening? You can't kick this? So instead of me being transparent with someone and asking for help, I just go deeper, I push it deeper, I push it deeper, and I put on more and more complex church mask.
You got to understand the dynamic of posing in order to understand the dynamic of men and the fellowship of men and men's friendships, whether it's the bar scene or it's the men's retreat at church, okay? Same dynamic, right? Guys primarily are faking it, okay? Scared to death to be known, because what do they think is going to happen? Exactly what happened before with Dad, right? Criticism, ridicule, violence, rejection, abandonment. You know, we are just terrified that if you really see me, you're going to laugh, you're going to leave, right? You're going to be appalled. And so guys are like, I'm going to fake it, you know? So if you're a funny guy, you know, you kind of play the funny guy, or if you're the serious spiritual guy, you just kind of play the serious spiritual guy, and you don't get anything like real brotherhood. You don't get anything like genuine fellowship while all this posing is going on.
Someone once said, if you want to learn faith, do something you can't do. Most of us men, if we're honest at all about ourselves, we know what we don't have. That's why we try so hard to prove we've got it, because we don't have it. And when it comes to fathering, our hard drive is deficient.
The journey towards an authentic masculinity and the journey towards authentic brotherhood involves both a willingness to quit faking it, right? To just go, look, I'm done with the poser. I'm sick of that guy, right? It's the false self. It's the mask I put onto the world, and I'm just sick of it. I'm done with that life. I don't want to be that guy anymore. Setting that stuff down, and also beginning to experience some genuine healing of the inner brokenness, right? That opens up this phenomenal world of friendship and connection and band of brothers that guys crave and is available. And it's available in Christianity like it's available nowhere else.
Most men don't know that in God's eyes, they are loved just like they are. And that God already knows our weaknesses. We can't hide them from Him. He already knows about them. But that when we surrender to Him and openly open up our weaknesses before Him and other men, that the Holy Spirit comes in and really does a marvelous work in bonding our hearts together with one another.
At age 41, I was providing a great life for my family financially, which is what I believed was my only responsibility as a dad.
Money becomes an idol, becomes a symbol of success. It's not a measure of success. So that's something men can do with or without God. They can make money. And in our society, if you make money, it proves to some that you are successful, significant, all that kind of stuff. The problem with, as every rich man will tell you, you never get enough, and it never satisfies that need for significance.
I spent thousands of dollars at restaurants I never dreamed I would be going to as a kid who grew up in government-assisted housing. I had created a pretty chaotic life for myself, but in my mind, I had finally reached the pinnacle of success. Most of my life, I lived with the feeling that I had to prove to a world that didn't even know it needed proof, and to my dad, who had been dead for many years, that I could make it on my own. Misguided, inadequate, and unprepared as a man, husband, and father, I struggled at all the things that should have mattered most, but they didn't.
But the things that are important to them as dads in parenting aren't important to their kids. Because when I ask kids to tell me about their dads, they never tell me what their dads do for a job. They never tell me, what kind of a house they live in. They tell me if their dad yells at them or not. They tell me if their dad laughs. They tell me if their dad's fun to be with. They tell me stories about things they did with their dads. They tell me about living life next to their dads. That's the big stuff to our kids. And once dads get tuned into that, then they're going to really be unafraid of in their parenting. And that's my hope and prayer for every dad out there and for our country, really.
My world was falling apart and I was struggling to keep it all together. I was having all kinds of problems. I was a social alcoholic, spending hours drunk in bars in different cities 2 and 3 nights a week. My relationship with my wife and kids was suffering deeply because I was gone all the time. And even when I was home, I wasn't really there. I was having health issues and I was afraid of losing my job. It was the darkest day of my life. I was scared and convinced I was all alone and that I was the only one who had issues. There was a conversation I had had with a friend of mine just a few years earlier that I had thought about often and always remembered. We were playing golf, and I was sharing with him some of the struggles and trials I was going through at the time. At one point, he turned to me and said, "You grew up without a father, didn't you?" And I said, "Yes." And I went on to give him this great 10-minute explanation about how incredible my mom is. As soon as I finished, he turned to me and said, "But was she a dad?" It was at that point that I really began to understand the significant and lifelong impact of growing up without my father. My friend went on to explain the idea of a father wound. He said that many people are wounded by their dads because of their dad's words or actions.
Knowing that your dad is there for you and that he will never leave you and never forsake you, right, establishes a confidence, again, in a boy's heart that he's able to move into a man's world. If that gets wounded, he is going to fear rejection and abandonment for the rest of his life. And so, in very severe cases, you get, emotional attachment disorders, right? And they can't commit to a relationship and they can't experience love and like deep withdrawal, deep hiding. In less severe, you'll just get guys who are fairly checked out, don't want to commit to a relationship, don't really want to invest in friendships with men. And you go, why do men isolate? What's with the isolation thing? Most guys don't have friends, right? And when they do get in social settings, it stays pretty surface level. Well, they're afraid of exposure. They're afraid of rejection. Everyone's going to do to me what dad did to me is the deep fear, right? So if it's criticism, then he's hypersensitive to criticism, right? And he can't take just a simple instruction from his boss. Hey, Hal, you kind of blew it on that project. Can you get that fixed for me? And, he feels all this criticism. Well, that's the father wound, right? If it was abandonment, then he's going to fear abandonment, right? Or if it's betrayal, like as in many divorce scenarios, the wound is a betrayal wound in the man. He's going to fear betrayal in friendships. He's going to fear betrayal from his wife, right? And so he's going to insulate himself emotionally.
A lack of words, a lack of affirmation can be a curse. When a dad's not there, what he's actually saying to you, that you hear loud and clear, even if he never says it, is you're not worth it to me to be here. You're not worth it to me to be here.
Because my dad chose to abandon me, I was very bitter, angry, and resentful, and it was impacting every aspect of my life. I knew I needed to change, but I did not want to face this monster in the mirror that I had created. I didn't want to deal with all the guilt, shame, unworthiness, and fear because of all the things I had done and the mistakes I had made as a husband and a father. I drove away from the golf course that day feeling an incredible sense of relief that I wasn't weird or abnormal because of all the things I had been struggling with. It was as if I had been walking around for years with a nameless, unidentified disease no doctor could cure. This idea of a father wound made sense to me.
You recognize you got a wound, and you go to a doctor. Now for a man, it might mean to go to a counselor, Christian counselor. It would certainly mean at some point talking to another man, at least one of them, maybe better, a platoon of men.
I had a friend who recommended a counselor named Dr. Tom, and he guided me into a past I knew I could not go through by myself. After years of being angry, I struggled to talk about my dad and the pain of what he had done.
And oftentimes the emotion, and this was true with you, is just below the surface. But all I have to do is ask one or two questions, and here are the tears, and here's the pain.
We talked about my dad and the memories I had of my life with and without him. I had no idea my behavior was a direct result of my dad and my feelings of abandonment, and the angry 11-year-old boy that still lived within me and who did not want to know anything about his dad soon became a man with a never-ending desire to know and hear more stories about him. I started to think about a lot of the things with my dad, and just wanting to know, the curiosity of wanting to know what kind of man he was, what kind of boy he was, to know about his life. I think every person has this longing to know what their father was like when he was little, and what did he like to do for hobbies, and what kind of man was he, what did his friends think about him. I had an incredible curiosity to know what molded and shaped my dad into the man that he was. My dad grew up in Millington, Tennessee. His dad died from pneumonia when he was 9, and he was raised mostly by his grandmother. His mom worked during the day as a telephone operator and spent most nights going out. She married a total of 5 times, giving my dad little stability and a father figure. As a boy, he lived right down the street from my mom's family and became best friends with her younger brother. As a young teenager, his mom married her 5th husband, who moved the family to Louisiana. My dad then faced head-on the reality that his mom cared more about men than him. Abandoning him at the age of 16 in New Orleans to live on his own, his mom left with her new husband, who drove an 18-wheeler. Determined to make it on his own, he lived by himself over a bowling alley where he worked at night. He would get up early every morning before school to hunt for scrap metal that he would sell in order to have lunch money that day. After high school, with the support and encouragement of his coach, he received a football scholarship to Arkansas A&M, which was just a few hours' drive from his hometown in Millington. When visiting his childhood friend one weekend, he found out my mom was still single. Wasting no time, he asked her out and they began dating. Every spare day between his busy school and football schedule was spent hitchhiking back and forth to see her in Millington. Not wanting to continue the long-distance relationship, they married and they were soon raising 3 boys. With the entrepreneurial spirit he learned on the streets as a young man and his desire to be successful, he opened a tire store. By all accounts, he was a brilliant businessman and salesman, eventually turning the 1 store into 4. Gone most of the time, he was doing the best he knew how to provide for his family. Somewhere along the way, he befriended a couple of guys who talked him into making some quick, easy money. Unfortunately, my dad never seemed to quite get away from the fast money lifestyle, frequently getting into financial troubles and writing bad checks to bail his way out. He began running a counterfeiting operation and was eventually arrested as he stepped off a plane one day returning from a trip. He decided to turn state's witness and as a result, spent less than a year in prison. When he was released, the FBI approached him with the news that out of 4 men on a hit list, He was the only one still alive. My family was put into witness protection and flown to Fort Knox, where we lived for 10 months under an alias. We moved to Texas to start a new life when they cleared us to leave. On April 10th, 1979, my dad's lawyer told him he was headed back to prison following his court date scheduled for that afternoon. My dad told my mom many times he would never go back to prison. He never made it to court that day. For 30 years, I had thought I was the only one who struggled with this issue and that I was all alone. As I began to share my story and hear the stories of many others, I soon realized that there are millions of people who suffer from a father wound, and it was an epidemic that was much bigger than I ever imagined.
Growing up without my father, like I said, my grandma raised us. And when that happened to my father, him killing himself, my mom went crazy, in and out of prison. So my grandma took care of us because she didn't want CPS to take us. We would go to this park called Ripley House. And when me and my brothers would go to this park, we'll walk to the park, we're like 13, 14. We would see these dudes hanging around smoking weed. So when we would go that way, they would stop us. Hey, come over here. So we would stop and we started smoking weed. I looked up to these dudes because my father wasn't around. So we would go over there every day and get high, start to lead to pills, crack, coke. I guess that's why I grew up like this. I think if my dad was around, I don't think I'd be here today. Actually, to tell you the truth.
When there's not that male influence there around you to show you, and there's this void and there's this hunger for that male attention. And I definitely needed that and wanted that in my life.
I wish my dad, in a broad stroke, would have showed me how to be a man, what it meant to just be a respectable man, how to respect myself, how to deal with women, how to treat women. I wish he would have taught me not to curse, not to use profanity. I was real good at it by the time I was in 4th grade. I wish he would have taught me self-control. All the things that I know now that I so want to teach my kids, I wish my dad would have taught me.
It's related to the abandonment. It was related to the sense that I took on as damaged goods. Okay, if my dad isn't here caring for me, there's something inherently wrong with me. So I took that with me into the beginning of addiction. I can honestly tell you, I don't remember a time early on that I was doing it for party's sake. The instant that it hit my system, I was like, I'm home. I don't feel nothing but good. And all those voices and all that inadequacy, all the shame, all the invisibility, all those things were gone. They were gone. So it became my quest, in a sense, to make sure I stayed in a state of numbness, however that figured into the equation, so I could continue to feel like those things that hurt so bad were pushed down so far that I could have some semblance of freedom.
I learned that there's no right way to do a wrong thing. I think that my father's intentions were usually probably pretty good, but the way he went about them were always bad. And no matter how hard he tried to do something good the wrong way, it always failed. I wish that my father could have loved his children more than his love of gambling, because no matter how much he maybe did love us or said he loved us, obviously his addiction to gambling meant more to him. And I would imagine there's other people that could relate to that addictive behavior, be it alcohol, drugs, gambling, or whatever addictive behavior there is in their family, that it just was the most important thing in his life, was getting another dollar to make another bet.
I mean, there are a lot of things that I knew very surface level, that now that he's not here and I'm older, I wish he'd have told me back then so I could actually relate to him, because now I'm here and I have no idea. I mean, I can't get that back, because he's a pretty amazing man. But it's sad I didn't know that about him until he was gone.
You know, I was promiscuous at an early age, drank at an early age, always searching for affirmation, needing affirmation, not understanding that, you know, you aren't good enough, because when your father, especially I would say a father, abandons you, you feel unloved. I just don't understand how you can know that you have a child in this world that you have nothing to do with.
One day as I was sitting in Dr. Tom's office, God revealed a question to me. How could I be so angry, bitter, and resentful towards a man who didn't know how to be a father? I knew my dad had grown up without a father, but I didn't truly understand it until that day.
That's the last step in healing, is to recognize that your dad didn't give you what you needed because he never got it. He never had it to give. So you got to forgive your dad. You got to pray, Jesus, show me my dad the way you see him. You got to have a box of Kleenex on hand. I always say, a little boy cries from his father's wounds. Dad hurt you, you cry. A real man cries for his father's wounds.
As I began to hear more stories about his life and the way he grew up, I found forgiveness for my dad.
I remember getting a call from the VA hospital. I was friends with one of the nurses there, and I said, just, let me know what's going on at all times. And she called me and she said, you better get down here. I don't think you're gonna have another chance to say goodbye to your dad. So I immediately hustled down. And I get to the hospital bed and my dad is completely passed out. And I grabbed his hand. I knew I needed to say it then, and I couldn't even repeat the words that I said. I just know that it was full of love and forgiveness and wishing him the best. And when I turned around, the nurse had walked into the room while I was talking to my dad, and she was just full of tears. And she said, I just didn't want to interrupt you to tell you that he passed away an hour earlier. And I said, you know what? I didn't do that for him. I did that for me. And I did. It was important for me to truly forgive him in my heart. It's the best thing I've ever done.
I would want to say it face to face and hug him and say, man, I love you. No matter what, I love you. And I don't blame you. You don't owe me anything. Maybe that more so than I love you, because I tell him I love you. Maybe just letting him know you don't owe me anything. I've healed. God has delivered me. He's my father who never disappoints me, so I don't want him to walk with any guilt and shame. And I think he might still be walking with some guilt and shame.
I think the thing that I would tell him, though, is that I forgive him.
I forgive you. And I'm sorry that I didn't. I'm sorry I didn't when you were here.
I walked out of Dr. Tom's office a new man to a new world with a new perspective. And I began to live a life with my wife and kids I never thought was possible. Because of the forgiveness I found from my dad, my whole life began to change. And the more I talked with others, the more God was teaching me about how I could be a better dad. I was inspired by Neil Jeffrey as he told me stories about his hero.
My dad was truly, as most boys see in their dad, he was my hero. God planted what Isaiah kind of talks about in the book of Isaiah, a giant oak tree of righteousness right smack dab in the middle of my house. That was my dad. He always prayed for us, and he'd in fact, hundreds of ball games. My dad before the game, hey son, let's have a pregame prayer. We'd huddle up after the game, win or lose. And sometimes I remember I had some tough losses. Dad would say, hey, we're gonna have a Thanksgiving prayer, and just thank the Lord. And we'd huddle up and we'd pray. He'd write me a letter. My dad was a little writer. He always referred to me as honorable number one son, because I was his first son. Dear honorable number one son. This is handwritten now. Just wanted you to know I mentioned your name to the Father this morning. Love, Daddy. He loved us, and in the tough times of life, you know, he just he spoke truth into us, and he just by his life, we just saw this is how a man does life. You know, how does a man love a woman? Well, every boy needs to know that. I know how it ought to be done because I had a man who did it, and I watched him do it. I watched him love my mom, and I realized, you know what? I want to be like my dad, who did life well. His marriage was good, wasn't perfect, but it was a good, strong marriage, and he loved my mom, honored my mom until the day he died, raised us kids, and you know what? I realized that's who I want to be, is how I want to live my life. And it makes me realize every day, I want to live my life in such a way as a dad, that when my son passes my life, I pray he sees something in me he wants to be just like his dad. Or my girls have been raised in such a way by me, and see me treat their mom in such a way that those girls feel like, you know what, I'm not going to settle for any man unless he's like my dad, and treats me the way I've seen my dad treat my mom.
I wish my dad would have been home more often so that we could have had more talks, more father-daughter time.
I wish he told me that he loved me. I wish he would have
showed me how to love my wife and how to raise my children.
I wish he would have told me
that I didn't have to face life on my own.
I wish he would have
understood. I wish he would have told me.
He was proud of everything I have done.
I wish he would have been there.
I wish he would have spent more time with us as a family. Instead of him being passionately in pursuit of his desire to be successful.
I wish my dad would have told me
if I didn't accomplish something or another, that he was proud that I tried, that I got out there and tried.
I wish he told me
how to be a father.
I wish he would have thought harder for my mom.
I wish he would have
said, I love you and you're important.
And I just wish he could have gotten it.
I wish my dad, in a broad stroke, would have showed me
that I was somebody and show me how to fend for myself, you know, without me having to go do it on my own.
I wish my dad
would have taught me what to look for in a husband.
I wish he thought about what he was doing, thought about the other people that were going to be hurting more than how he was hurting when he did what he did. Thinking about how it was going to affect my life and my mom's life and how much it might possibly hurt us.
I always wish that he would have shown me
transparency and just, you know, sensitivity.
You know, I wish I had that father that
would ask his daughter, what do you need from me? What can I do for you?
I wish he would have taught me that I was important.
I wish he would love my mom differently.
I wish he would have told me that you don't have all the answers all the time.
I wish he would have
just showed up. I mean, just been a part of my life.
I wish that he cared, you know, show me love.
I wish he taught me
how to appreciate other people, how to manage money.
I wish he told me
that I was important, that I was special or precious, or that I mattered.
I wish he would have
not dwelled on his sin and just understood that God forgives and moved forward.
I wish my dad would have told me
I have what it takes.
I wish that
when, you know, the man came to pick me up for a date at 16 years old, or the boy, I should say, that my father was at the door with a shotgun going, you better not mess with my daughter, you know, or I'm going to mess with you. You know, I wish I had that. You know, I had nobody there protecting me.
because of the disconnect, the distance between me and my dad emotionally, spiritually, I didn't really have that with God. I didn't even know it was possible. So whenever the word father was spoken, my mind would go right to my father. So I could not separate the two. So the first time a pastor or a preacher or anyone suggests to say, "I love you, Father," was weird. Couldn't say it. I literally could not get the words out of my mouth. I had to force the words out. And after I said it, I had to think about what I just said. It did not make sense to me. I couldn't make the connection that I could actually say and mean that I love you, Father, because of the bitterness that I had towards the person who played the role of the father in my life.
I just found God to be somewhere out there, somewhere. No one that was personal, no one that was there really. And, you know, that's kind of how I viewed my dad for a long time, you know, because he wasn't near to me. He was living in another city. God was there. It's just that he was far away, like my dad was.
He just continued to show love, and that was the thing. It was really this, that I'm for you. Whenever I heard the gospel presented of, hey, there is a God that wants to have a relationship with you. It just, yeah, you know, just like my earthly father. That's what I saw, is that no matter what we had done, I just knew his love wasn't going to stop.
I was following my dad, and I ended up following who he was following, which was Jesus.
As a father with 3 girls, I sat amazed as I listened to Dr. Meg Meeker talk about a dad's impact on his daughters.
Girls bond through talking and through listening. And so how dads speak is very important to daughters because we become intimate with people by talking. Your daughters need you. They need your person. They need your touch. They need your time. They need your feelings. They need to hear you talk about anything. What are your opinions about things? What do you think about the president? What do you think about God? They need to see who you are as a person. And the only way you can do that is through spending time with them. If a daughter knows that she has her dad's love, life makes sense. If she doesn't know she has dad's love, life doesn't make sense. And there really is a dad hole in every daughter's heart. And if a daughter doesn't have that hole filled with her dad, she will look anywhere to get it filled. And one of the most common things that I see is adolescent girls turning to boys for attention, for love, for affection, even just to be touched. Girls will do anything just to be touched and to feel loved by a boy. And they'll have sex with any boy. Even though they may not like it, they will do it because for that moment, they feel that a man loves them. Dads have no clue about the power that they have in their kids' lives. That's what dads need to understand, is that you may feel like a loser. You may feel like you're not earning enough money. You may not feel strong enough, smart enough, athletic enough. Your kids aren't thinking about that, particularly your daughters. They could care less. To them, you're enormous in their eyes. It's very interesting. We're finding now that even girls who are the product, if you will, of sperm donors, who were raised by a single mom, literally didn't have a dad, are going now and trying to find who that man was who donated sperm. You see, there's that tie, that bind that is so strong that they will seek out a stranger to identify him as dad. That's why I call it a primal need. It's a primal drive that all girls have. That's how much it throws them off if they don't have dad.
I've been married 4 times.
I think you don't trust them. And so it goes back to you trying to do everything you think you should do to keep them, not being yourself even, becoming someone else to keep them so you don't lose that love.
I kind of went towards a father figure. I was looking for a dad that would pay attention to me.
I was looking so hard for security, for somebody to love me and not leave me.
They're going to leave me. I'm not worthy to be with a man. They don't care about me enough to stay around.
I used sex to get love.
I chose someone just like my dad.
The reason girls tend to marry somebody with very similar characteristics as their father is because they get so used to relating to a man they love in a certain way, and they don't know another way to do it, and it's subconscious, and so they just fold themselves back into that type of relationship because it's familiar. It's so deeply rooted in them. And that's why, you know, many girls who have been abused as youngsters by their dad end up marrying abusers because that's all they know.
You get a little girl that's broken, doesn't know she's loved, doesn't know that, you know, she's beautiful and that she will be chosen. She will give herself, right, in order to try and get that father love, try and get that assurance that she didn't get growing up. You get a dad who's blessing his daughter, right? She's going to know what kind of man to look for. She's going to know what to hold out for in a man. She's not going to settle for some broken poser, right? She's going to wait for a good man who's going to love her well.
Recognizing and coming to terms with my own father wound also made me think about how I had wounded my own children. I knew I couldn't do anything about the past, but I could do something about the present and the future.
I believe a man's main role, one, is to love his God with all of his heart, soul, mind, and strength, and discover who God wants him to be. Secondly, is to love his wife, the mother of his kids.
I think it's important for dads to teach their kids about God. The reason it's important for dad to teach their kids about God is because you are your kids' first reflection to male love. And you sort of put a template over their hearts for how they're going to relate to all male figures, including God. You are the conduit to God. The first male conduit to God.
Love God, love your wife, love your family, and then apply yourself to providing for them and enjoy the fruit of that. Allow them to see there's nothing more important than that in life.
Here's what you need to know. The power of your love in their life is immeasurable. You are the most powerful figure in the world in their lives. Offer your love freely. Offer it openly. Offer it often. Because here's the great promise. Love covers a multitude of sins. It's not that we're going to get this thing perfect, okay? I've wounded my sons. I've blown it. I think I've been a great dad, but I've also messed up, okay? They know I love them. They know that in the core of their being. And when a boy or a girl knows that, it can cover over some of the other mistakes we make. Tell them you love them often.
Do what you say you're going to do. Be consistent. Showing them that you love them is being there. That's the way they understand it. Go talk to your church leaders or, friends that you know that appear to be great fathers to you, that have a great relationship with their kids.
Love on your daughters. They will find in you as a father what they are going to be looking for later in a man, in a husband.
Be very careful with your anger, because it doesn't take a lot of anger to wound a child's trust in a father. And so when we pick them up and hold them and give them hugs and receive their butterfly kisses and things, they feel emotionally delighted in by daddy. My daddy loves me.
As children are constructing their understanding of the world, the dads occupy a very central role in that understanding of the world. And their behavior is so critical to giving the child a positive sense of what a good father is and what good male behavior is.
And my dad was not perfect. He had issues. He struggled with stuff all of his life, and he didn't have a good influence in his life, but essentially my dad broke that chain and raised in me. And now, praise God, I'm raising my kids differently.
The best thing a father can do for his children is love their mother. But for a child to see his father love their mother. Something happens in that child receives that centers their life.
Be a man of God first. Love your wife. Show that you love your wife. After God, there is nothing more important than your family.
Do not be afraid. Never parent out of fear. Love your kid the best you can. Don't try to be perfect. And always move forward. Make amends, say you're sorry, but try better the next time, because that's all your kids want.
But your greatest calling in life, the impact you're going to make that is greater than any other impact, is at home as a dad.
I have heard it said that a father can impact hundreds of generations of those who come after him. I still make mistakes, but I believe that now I make less of them because I walk in daily awareness of my words and actions and how they impact my children. I am not now, nor will I ever be the perfect father, but I am doing my best every day to become a better father. On that cold day in February 2009, I took a step on the journey to find forgiveness from my dad. I had to admit that I had a father wound, ask for help, seek counsel, find healing, and most importantly, forgive. Forgiveness is a powerful thing. It freed me from the chains of anger, bitterness, and resentment. It relieved the burden of guilt, shame, and unworthiness that I carried most of my life. I found forgiveness, but what I also received was a second chance to be the man, husband, and dad I was meant to be. It has been the most challenging road I have ever traveled, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, and I would do it all again. Because what I have learned has helped me change my legacy as a father, made me a better father, and has forever changed my life. My hope is that you too will take that step.
If I had a choice between a father verbally telling me he loved me and the other choice would be actions, I would choose the action over the words.
You know, you can just say it all the time and have no actions to follow it and still feel unloved.
I always wondered what he really thought of me. I think most men really want to know deeply, you know, what their fathers really think of them.
Dads change their kids' lives in a sentence, by a look in your eye, by an encouraging word, by a phone conversation, and you don't even realize you're doing it, but that's the power of a dad.
The way a young child learns about what it is to be a man is through observing his father. And for girls, how they learn about what husbands are like is through observing their father. Dads do play a very essential and important role in helping the child construct a sense of what roles people play, what good behavior is like, what bad behavior is like.
I remember drinking certain drinks because I remember seeing my dad drink those drinks. No other reason. Didn't like the taste, but I remember the images of my dad carrying that bottle in his hand, and that was pretty much the only reason why I chose that drink out of all the drinks in the liquor store, because that's what my dad drank.
Boys become men by watching men. They watch, they imitate, they watch, they imitate. They try on your behaviors. They try on your faith. They try on your tone of voice. So if you swear, guess what your son's going to do? You know, if you yell at him, guess what he's going to do? And the same is true for daughter. So if you really want to teach a great lesson to a daughter or to a son, you have to be that lesson.
I was inspired to that, to be that to my kids, because I had a dad in my life. But what's amazing about that, he didn't have a dad in his life. And there are so many dads out there who didn't think they can't, but the fact is they can. And they need to be. And step up and just be that man that our kids need for us to be.
If you really think through how the way you treat your wife as a husband is influencing and shaping the kind of husband your son's going to be one day.
Modeling is very, very important. And I think particularly for a little girl watching how her dad treats her mother. It's not just how he treats her. I mean, that's extremely important. And it's interesting because dads will often be kind of rough with their wives. They may yell at their wives, they may swear at their wives, but then turn to their daughter and treat her very differently. Well, that doesn't sit with a kid, with a daughter particularly. So it's not only important how you treat your daughter, but how your daughter sees you treat other women, wives, his own mother, his sister.
With my dad, he could go months, literally, and not talk to my mom. So when me and my wife would get in a fight, I would just say, I'm just not going to talk about it.
The way a young child learns about what it is to be a man is through observing his father. And for girls, how they learn about what husbands are like is through observing their father. The child then will learn and seek out other men who reflect similar behavior as a dad did.
If your granddad was abusive, probably your dad was abusive. And if your dad was abusive, there's probably abusive tendencies in you toward your kids. And when you abuse your kids, they're going to abuse their kids. Why? Because the iniquities, a tendency toward a given area, follows multiple generations.
This is a spiritual principle given to us in Scripture. The sins of the fathers being passed down generation to generation. You'll find in one family line it's divorce. And you'll look back and go, wow, great-grandfathers and great-uncles and then fathers and cousins. And then it's like, what's with divorce in this family line? But in another family line, it's not that at all. It's alcohol. Right? And it seems like, wow, yeah, you know, my great uncle was an alcoholic, and then my cousin was, and now I am. Sometimes it's sexual issues, even things like failure or rejection. And this is a very helpful thing to understand, that quite often what you feel is just your mess, your struggles, is actually something that kind of got passed down through a family line. And therefore, you can actually get out from under it. It's not just you. And the power of Christianity and the power of the cross to break those things is just phenomenal. That you can come out from under that whole legacy of sexual sin. You can come out from under that whole legacy of debt or failure or rejection or betrayal or whatever it is that's kind of been dogging your heels for years to experience a greater freedom. And this is also a phenomenal gift you give to your kids. When you draw the line in the sand and you say, that generational stuff does not pass me. That ends here. What a gift that you are giving to your children, your grandchildren, their children, to stop the legacy here. I mean, you're a hero.
There's several things that pride does in our life. And to the extent that it has an impact on our life, then it influences our ability to be a good husband, to be a good dad. It prevents us from admitting we have a need. No, I'm good. I got no issues. So we really don't live authentically. We live in the shadows. We live as posers. It prevents us from asking for help. If we can't admit we have a need, then we can't ask for help. And we can give help, but we can't reveal a certain vulnerability and ask for help. Pride places a barrier between us and God. It can be so subtle. It's subtle in a way that we don't even recognize.
The proud person is just the person that's saying, I can do this on my own. I need to do this on my own. I need to show you I can do it on my own. I've come out of the Long Ranger John Wayne generation, where the posse goes one direction looking really goofy, and the one man goes off on his own and does it all. And we grow up thinking we have to be that one man. We have to be able to handle it. Pride in the hearts of men, which is strong, definitely hinders you from being who God's called you to be, because you don't have God's power working in you and His life working in you.
Images of masculinity in the media are kind of crazy making, because they go down these two really different tracks. You get the Bruce Willis, uber tough, die-hard guy who's able to jump off buildings and take a couple of hits to the leg and still, get the bad guys, right? You kind of get this incredible power strength, the super athletes, the guys who can do the triathlons and the Ironmans, all of that. But then you also get in the media this, that most dads are kind of idiots, and you get the Homer Simpson, and you get the caricatures of men as kind of bungling fools, right? And so there you have it. Every man wants to be seen as the hero. Every man fears he's the idiot, right? And so don't do anything that could expose yourself, right? That you are the idiot. I don't want to be Homer Simpson, right? I want to be Superman. I want to be, the amazing guy. And so we'll do everything we can to find a way to prove that we're amazing. And we'll do everything we can to hide any possible flaws in us, weakness, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, right, society does not encourage this kind of, a kind of openness, a kind of honesty among men. And sadly, in the church, we don't encourage discussion of brokenness, right? We're scared of it. Feels like it might be somehow diminishing what God has done for us. Or we just don't know how to deal with it. Some guy opens up his brokenness and everybody, freezes and goes, holy cow, this guy's a mess. We got to get him to a counselor. When in fact, every man you meet is broken inside. You just don't get through this world without taking those wounds.
I think the media has a huge role to play in beating up dads. And dads say, yeah, but that's just TV. But look at television, look at movies, listen to the music that our kids listen to, and there is not a smart dad to be found. Dads are portrayed in the media, which our kids are watching 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a day, as dumb. Kids believe their dads are dumb. And while we may say, yeah, that's just TV, make no mistake, our kids are listening to this.
Children have an incredible ability to forgive. It's like, it's okay, Dad. I knew it's okay. But you know what our kids often don't hear? I'm sorry, I was wrong. You know, I misread that situation and I corrected you and I shouldn't have. I was wrong. Would you please forgive me?
When we survey the kids that we work with and the fathers, and we say, what would you change most about your dad? We wish he would admit it honestly, openly when he's wrong.
When a dad asks for forgiveness and apologizes to a child, it draws that child very, very close to dad. That child now feels that he or she can trust dad more. Dad's smart. Dad is strong because dad acknowledges his mistakes, but now dad's going to do something about it. He said shut up, or he swore at me, and now he said that was wrong. I apologize. I'm not going to do that again. Oh, that makes me feel so good. My dad is so great. Now I can really trust my dad to do the right thing because it didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel good, and he's going to make it right. You see, now that child feels so close to dad. And isn't that what we all want with our kids? We want to be closer with our kids. And now that child is going to trust dad a whole lot more. And would you as a dad want to miss out on all that? That's what you miss out on when you are too proud to go to your child and say, I am so sorry I said what I said. I'm so sorry that I did what I did. Will you forgive me?
I have no problem going into my son's room and saying, I just want you to know I messed up. You know, I got angry with you about such and such, and would you forgive me for that? And man, that just means the world to him.
My dad was just a very humble, quiet man.
I didn't have a great amount of time to spend with my father growing up. My parents were divorced at a young age.
A really jovial guy, loved to joke. He was a great host. He loved to make people feel welcomed. He loved to cook.
Absent. Just absent.
My dad is a rocker, you know.
My father's articulate. My father's intelligent. My father's a great athlete.
Absent.
7th grade education, grew up on the streets of Brooklyn, was running numbers by the time he was 13, 14, was working for bookmakers, Shylocks, loan sharks.
Angry, bitter.
My father was an adulterer.
I can vaguely remember about my father when I was growing up because I think him and my mother got divorced when I was 6. Didn't see him no more.
Traveling salesman, never home.
He's cool, man. He's a funny man.
My father was a very domineering, very abusive man.
He was a pretty amazing man.
My father never really took ownership of mistakes. It was always somebody else's fault.
Unpredictable.
My dad was a hard-working guy.
He was very impressive when he walked into a room. He was one of those kind of guys you would look at, you know.
Absent.
Selfish at times.
Well, I didn't really know him too well.
I've got a dad that's one of my best friends today.
Never. Never did.
Never.
I don't really recall my dad ever saying, I'm so proud. I don't recall ever hearing him say, I love you. It was very hurtful because there were times when I thought I accomplished something.
I never had a father to tell me how he was proud of me.
My dad never told me he was proud of me. You know, he never told me that he loved me.
I can never remember a time that he said, son, I love you, or anything like that.
To hear my dad just say, you know, I love you, or I'm proud of you, you know, I think would have been huge.
Yeah, he did. I wish I had one more time where he said he was proud of me. Just one more. If you asked me if there was one thing that you could get from your dad, it would be, I'm proud of you, son.
You're always, even as an adult, still yearning for that acceptance, for that love that you never felt.
I think every man longs to be loved and hugged by their father. Every boy wants that. Of course, there are a huge number of men who never had that, who never had a dad, one, who hugged them, two, who told them, hey, son, I love you and I'm proud of you. And they long for that.
It's very important that dads verbalize to their kids, I love you, you're great, you're patient, you're capable. It sounds pretty basic, and a lot of dads say, why do I have to do that? My kids know that. But your kids don't really know that. You need to tell your kids, I love you, because kids don't think about the fact that dad has provided them with this home or dad has given them a good education. They don't think about that. All they know is how they feel, and they need to know every day, in order to be successful at school, concentrate in school, they need to know they're standing on solid ground. And the ground is only solid if they know when they walk out of the door in the morning and go to school that dad loves them and believes in them. Then life is good.
I learned honesty. I learned how to be a great friend.
That I cannot trust anything or anyone.
How to swear.
And drug abuse.
He was really affectionate with my mom. He didn't hold back. If he wanted to kiss her, he'd kiss her. If he wanted to hug her, he'd hug her.
How to be a good salesman.
An incredible work ethic.
That the world is a very evil, dark, violent place.
Not experiencing the time, the love, the attention, the mentorship, the stewardship that a father can provide for their child. What I learned is how valuable that is.
Learned how to be violent.
I thought that it was normal to be talked down to.
I learned how to work hard, learned how to be consistent, learned how to be strong.
How to treat people.
I think the good thing I learned is how much time he instilled in us as a father.
That it wasn't okay to fail. It just wasn't.
Racism.
That violence is the way that things are done.
I got his sense of humor, which he is absolutely hysterically funny.
How to run away, from your responsibilities, from your commitments.
You can have a sense of humor even in the worst of times.
Abuse.
Never cry, never show your weakness.
He tried to handle everything on his own. He would internalize it.
A good thing that I learned from him would be, to not abandon my own child.
It's the most selfish act that a person can have, to bring someone in the world and then not see them through the journey.
He's influenced me in a myriad of ways. He's definitely instilled in me strength. That a dad is a protector, fearless.
The estrangement from my father really created a void in my self-esteem growing up as a young man.
It made me feel like there was always somebody there for me. It made me feel like secure. Made you know there was always a strong force behind you that was lifting you up, supporting you.
I think at an early age, that void manifests itself into different types of insecurities.
It's always nice to have somebody there that's got your best interests and that loves you unconditionally, whether you win or you lose.
Not feeling grounded in a sense of security. Living with my mother and knowing my father was out there always gave me the feeling of somewhat of an inadequacy, of not being complete.
Ignore them. Abandon them. Treat them as someone who doesn't matter. And that child perceives that he doesn't matter unless he gets personalized
one-on-one, independent, uninterrupted time with Dad.
To say, I don't matter. My presence doesn't matter. They're better off if I'm not there.
Dads believe that they need, if they're going to be with their kids, they need to set aside special time, special conversations, make things right. I see this prevalent particularly in divorced dads who only get their kids every other weekend. I need to make this time special, so I'm not going to this and I'm not going to that. I'm going to make it wonderful and jam all these things in. But really, the life-changing moments that a daughter receives from her dad come along the way. It's just when you're living life next to your kids.
Not show them how important they are by being willing to get involved in their lives. A kid knows how important he is by how much time and how much sacrifice you're willing to make to get involved, which means you may have to have arguments. It means you have to discuss things. It means there's conflict. If they're not important enough to get in conflict with, they don't feel important.
One of the biggest mistakes I think we make with our kids is just assuming that they know we love them, assuming that they know we care, instead of reaching out to them and saying, you know, I want you to know I love you. And I am really proud of the woman of God that you are, the man of God that you are, and I want you to know that I am never too busy for you.
I think fathers make a mistake when they assume that things will be a good substitute for themselves. So when a dad says, I know I'm working extra hard, but I'm trying to provide good things for you and the kids. I don't know of a kid that would say, oh, Dad, please work harder. Don't come to the ball games. Don't spend any time with me. But, you know, make lots of money so that I can have everything that I want. If it comes right down to it, they'd rather have you than they would all the stuff. They'd rather have you at their ball game. They'd rather have you eat dinner with them. They'd rather have you put them to bed at night.
I think one of the biggest mistakes that fathers make today is this idea of they have to know all the answers, that they can't ask for help.
Thinking that what I provide for my kids is more important than being with my kids.
To underestimate the power of his influence.
Daughters need to know, and sons need to know, that their dad wants to be with them. Dad doesn't want to just provide. He doesn't want to just give them things. He doesn't want to just watch them do things. And Dad says, hey, let's come and do this. What happens in that child's self-esteem is huge. This figure who's larger than life in my eyes wants my company. And if he wants my company, there must be something good about me. There must be something he enjoys about me. He sees me. He likes what he sees. He's a really smart guy and he wants to have a conversation with me. I must be smart. I must be fun. And that's why time is so important, because those are the messages that kids get when they spend time with Dad. They just want to know that you want to be with them. The best thing a dad can do is to engage his kids. That when you're with your kids, listen to your kids, look at them when you're talking to them, you know, be courteous to them, express your feelings to them. And I think just be who you are to your kids, because that's all your kids really want is Dad. They just want Dad.
Be a man of God. You know, honestly. You can get into the accolades of, you know, encouraging your kids and things of that nature, but, you know, I want to be the man that God's called me to be in front of my son. And when I am that man, I walk in a strength and in a presence that I could never accomplish on my own.
I think it's important for dads to teach their kids about God. The reason it's important for dad to teach their kids about God is because you are your kids' first reflection to male love. And you sort of put a template over their hearts for how they're going to relate to all male figures, including God. That's a responsibility that dads have.
Your word is everything.
Instilling the importance of how awesome God is, that He is relevant, that He is important in your life.
Love them, show them that you love them, tell them that you love them, tell them that you're proud of them.
Show them how much you love your wife.
There's no shortcuts to this process. That since he's going to commit, he needs to be fully in. And what I mean by fully in is there's nothing part-time about being a father. And understand the beautiful opportunity that you have. It's not a burden, it's a beautiful opportunity.
To lead by example. And don't expect something more out of your children than you would expect out of yourself.
Be physical. Hug and kiss your kids every night. If you could kiss them and love them and tell them you love them and be verbal and don't hold anything back, and let them know right from the get-go they're smart, they're strong, they're good.
Just be there for them. Do everything you possibly can with them.
Build that relationship with your children. Don't keep that wall. Let there be accessibility there, that they see your struggles, that they know your hurts, they know even your fears, and they know your dreams, and let them see that, and let them be able to be open with you.
No one inspires a child more than a father.
Every dad is wired with everything he needs to be a great dad to his daughter and to his son. Any dad. Yes, he's going to make a lot of mistakes. Who cares? He's going to do a lot of great things right. And good men fall down, make mistakes, say they're sorry, and they get back up and they keep marching forward.
Father Effect video is the most influential 14 minutes of my life so far. It rocked me to the core the first time that I saw it. It's allowed me to build a rapport with my dad that's also opened up a whole new life with my children, my wife, and it's set me on a path to forgiveness that I was never even able to even think that was even available before. I've held so much hatred and animosity towards my father for almost 30 years that until I saw John's video, I didn't even know that it was because of my father. And due to the fact that I was able to witness this video, I now have a relationship with my father, and it changed my life immensely.
I watched the first 5 minutes of the film the night before, and I was like, you know what, Dad, I want you to watch with me. So we sat down and I turned on the YouTube and we started watching it, and you know, just having that effect with my dad sitting there and watching it, and you know, the movie explained the words and said things to him that I was never able to, that you know, I was always thought would cause an argument or a fight between us. And then hearing my dad at the end of it look at me and say, you know, I'm sorry I wasn't there. And now having that expression and having him say sorry to me, it was just like taking a cold shower and having that rush of exhilaration, just that overwhelming calm. It was great, you know, just having to be able to have that platform to start the relationship with my dad that I've been missing and wanting for 10 plus years there's no words to describe it. Just the mindset that I have now because of the film, and the mindset that my father has because of the film, has changed my life for the best. Well, my dad called my older brother and was like, you know, first off, let me say I'm sorry. I wasn't there. I didn't do what I was supposed to as a father. And he goes, I need you to do me a favor. If you do one thing for me, could you watch this movie that your brother told me about? So my dad told him what it was, and you know, and he goes, if you have a change of heart, if you want to talk to me, you know, I'd like to have a camping trip with you and your brother. And a couple days ago, actually it was last night, my brother, which me and my dad and my brother hasn't been in the same room or even in the same zip code in, God, 5 plus 10 years. I can't remember the last time we actually had a sit-down conversation between the three of us. He called my dad and asked him, you know, I watched the film, and is there any chance that we can do that camping trip you're talking about this weekend? Just having someone to say exactly how not only I felt, but knowing that my brother felt the same way, even though we've never talked that much, is a godsend.
Recently, the last couple of years, he became very verbally abusive. He started out being verbally abusive to me, and then he became verbally abusive to the kids. And he would scream when he got angry. He would throw things, throw dishes, and break them. He would, you know, slam his fist into the door, break the doors. He just had a lot of anger. He covered his anger for a long time with addictions, but in the last couple of years, something traumatic happened in our life, and then the anger started to come out, and he was very verbally abusive. He was angry at the world. He was angry at everybody. It was always somebody else's fault. And one night when he hit rock bottom, our daughter told him that if he does not get better, that she won't be in our lives anymore. When he watched The Father Effect for the first time and began crying, and watched it the second time and was still crying, I don't know how many days he watched it, how many people he showed it to, but he knew exactly when he watched The Father Effect what was wrong with him. It's like he had finally figured out why he was hurting, why he had addictions, why he was always trying to cover his pain. It was almost overnight that he figured out what was missing in his life, and it was a relationship with his father. And now that he has made peace with his dad, he has forgiven his dad, totally different man, a man that I never knew. I wasn't married to this man 18 years ago. This is the first time that I've met the real Darren. He has become the husband and the father that I always wanted.
It's so cloudy.
I was never prepared to be a father. I had no idea how hard it would be, or how heavy the responsibility would feel. You know, it doesn't seem right to have that much influence over one small life. The way they look up to you, and how easy it is to let them down. Maybe if my dad had been there, it would have been easier. But he wasn't. I grew up most of my life without a father. I can remember his face, but I can't remember a life with him. The last time I saw him, it was on a school day. He was always gone in the mornings, but for some reason he was able to drop me off that day. He even gave me a kiss. never forget that day.
On February 20th, 2009, I started a journey to find forgiveness for my father. I had no way of knowing how it would change my life forever.
A few years ago, I was playing golf with a friend of mine, and I was sharing with him some of the struggles and trials I was going through at the time. And at one point he turned to me and he said, "You grew up without a father, didn't you?" And I said, "Yes." And I went on to give him this great 10-minute explanation about how incredible my mom is. As soon as I finished, he turned to me and he said, "But was she a dad?" It was at that point that I really began to understand the significant and lifelong impact of growing up without a father. My friend went on to explain the idea of a father wound. He said that many people are wounded by their dads because of their dad's words or actions. Maybe it's a girl who's become promiscuous, never hearing the words "I love you" from her father. She's willing to do anything to hear them from a man. Maybe it's a son who feels angry, unworthy, or ashamed because of a dad who is physically or verbally abusive, which leads the son into an addiction to cover up the pain. For 30 years, I thought I was the only one struggling with this issue and that I was all alone. As I began to share my story, I soon came to understand that there are millions of people suffering from a father wound. And I discovered the absent father epidemic, which was much bigger than I ever imagined. Either physically or emotionally, an absent father has a profound effect on a son or a daughter.
A lack of words, a lack of affirmation can be a curse. When dad's not there, what he's actually saying to you, that you hear loud and clear, even if he never says it, is, "You're not worth it to me to be here. You're not worth it to me to be here."
So as I got older, I live in the neighborhood where I'm from, Second Ward. We would go to this park called Ripley House. And when me and my brothers would go to this park, we'll walk to the park, we're like 13, 14. We would see these dudes hanging around smoking weed. So when we would go that way, they would stop us, "Hey, come over here." So we would stop and we started smoking weed. You know, these dudes lived on the next block. They were older cats, you know. I was like 14, they were like 20, 21, you know. I looked up to these dudes because my father wasn't around. I guess that's why I grew up like this. I think if my dad was around, I don't think I'd be here today.
Me not having a dad kind of excluded me really believing in anything bigger than me.
Left unhealed, the father wound is carried into adulthood and can last a lifetime. If you could say one thing to your father right now, what would it be?
Why couldn't you tell me you love me?
Because I grew up with a father who was violent and angry and unpredictable, who was scary. I thought God was the same way. Because I grew up with a father who was to be feared, I thought God was to be feared. My decisions became fear-based. Marriage, because I was afraid to be alone. Sex, because I was afraid he wouldn't love me.
I wish that my father could have loved his children more than his love of gambling. Because no matter how much he maybe did love us or said he loved us, obviously his addiction to gambling meant more to him.
It's related to the abandonment. It was related to the sense that I took on as damaged goods. Okay, if my dad isn't here caring for me, there's something inherently wrong with me. So I took that with me into the beginning of addiction. I can honestly tell you, I don't remember a time early on that I was doing it for party's sake. The instant that it hit my system, I was like, I'm home. I don't feel nothing but good. And all those voices and all that inadequacy, all the shame, all the invisibility, all those things were gone. They were gone.
Because my dad chose to abandon me, I was very bitter, angry, and resentful, and it was impacting every aspect of my life.
Well, men struggle at being good fathers because they don't know what a good father is supposed to be. They haven't been taught. You can only give what you have. And so most of us as men, not having been taught properly, just do what we kind of think is right. It seems kind of right, but not sure if it's right, but well, heck with it. I don't have time to do anything else. Let's do this.
My dad never knew how to be a father. He never knew how to be a man. His father was killed when he was 2, so he wasn't there. And his stepfather died not too long after he married my grandmother. And my dad just really never had a chance. He never had a father figure there.
As I began to understand and hear more stories about my dad, his life, and the way he grew up, God revealed one question to me. How could I be so angry, resentful, and bitter towards a man who didn't know how to be a father? God showed me forgiveness from my dad, and it was because of that forgiveness that I finally became the man, the husband, and the dad that God meant for me to be.
I get to the hospital bed and my dad is completely passed out. And I grabbed his hand. I knew I needed to say it then, and I couldn't even repeat the words that I said. I just know that it was full of love and forgiveness and wishing him the best. And when I turned around, the nurse had walked into the room while I was talking to my dad, and she was just full of tears. And she said, I just didn't want to interrupt you to tell you that he passed away an hour earlier. And I said, you know what? I didn't do that for him. I did that for me, and I did. It was important for me to truly forgive him in my heart. It's the best thing I've ever done.
If you could say one thing to him right now.
I forgive you.
I said to myself, I forgive you. And I did it from the heart. And then I asked God to forgive me for even thinking that way, you know. All those years of resentment were gone.
The more I talked to others about their fathers, the good and the bad, the more I came to understand how I could become a better father.
What is the worst thing a father can do for his children?
Ignore them. Abandon them. Treat them as someone who doesn't matter. And that child perceives that he doesn't matter unless he gets personalized, one-on-one, independent, uninterrupted time with Dad.
I think fathers make a mistake when they assume that things will be a good substitute for themselves. So when a dad says, I know I'm working extra hard, but I'm trying to provide good things for you and the kids. I don't know of a kid that would say, oh, Dad, please work harder. Don't come to the ball games. Don't spend any time with me. But, make lots of money so that I can have everything that I want. If it comes right down to it, they'd rather have you than they would all the stuff. They'd rather have you at their ball game. They'd rather have you eat dinner with them. They'd rather have you put them to bed at night.
What do you think is the best thing a father can do for his children?
Be a man of God. You know, honestly, you can get into the accolades of, you know, encouraging your kids and things of that nature, but you know, I want to be the man that God's called me to be in front of my son. And when I am that man, I walk in a strength and in a presence that I could never accomplish on my own. I have no problem going into my son's room and saying, I just want you to know I messed up. You know, I got angry with you about such and such, and would you forgive me for that? And man, that just means the world to him.
As children are constructing their understanding of the world, the dads occupy a very central role in that understanding of the world. And their behavior is so critical to giving the child a positive sense of what a good father is and what good male behavior is.
The best thing a father can do for his children is love their mother. But for a child to see his father love their mother, something happens in that child receives that centers their life.
And my dad was not perfect. He had issues. He struggled with stuff all of his life, and he didn't have a good influence in his life, but essentially my dad broke that chain and raised in me. And now, praise God, I'm raising my kids differently.
Do not be afraid. Never parent out of fear. You know, love your kid the best you can. Don't try to be perfect. Keep moving forward. You know, make amends, say you're sorry, but try better the next time, because that's all your kids want.
But your greatest calling in life, the impact you're going to make that is greater than any other impact, is at home as a dad.
You need to hear this. The destruction of the family is the destruction of the Western world. Let me tell you why this won't succeed. For two reasons. One is this. This movement is going to slam into the brick wall of reality. There is such a thing as a natural family in the world. It takes precisely one man and one woman to make a child. That is a natural family. A child can only ever have two biological parents.
He's not wrong.
And I know we live in a fallen world, and there are issues and there are challenges and there are times when this is not the case. But in the overwhelming majority of situations, a child will be better off with their two biological parents together in the home. And those parents will be attached to their children in a way that no amount of social engineering can possibly overturn. And the second reason is as follows. This world is ultimately created by and ruled by a father. God the Father made everything. God the Father is in charge of everything. Attempts to overthrow fathers and families are at their core a mark of rebellion against the Almighty Father. And the problem with doing that is, He will win. And so this movement cannot succeed in the long term, and it will not succeed in the long term. The solution to a revolution is a reformation. It is a revival. It is an outpouring of the Spirit of God. And men and fathers seem to be the primary target of this. So I want to speak to the men. There is a movement that seeks to destroy your position and your place in society. But by the grace of God, you will not be destroyed. You're going to win. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to love God. We're going to love our wives. We're going to raise our kids. We're going to steer away from all of the vices that the enemy wants for us. We are going to reject pornography. We are going to reject promiscuity. We are going to reject all of these agendas. We're not going to be weak and emasculated. We're going to stand up and we're going to take our place. We're going to go to church. We're going to study God's word. We're going to pray. We're going to be filled with the Spirit. We're going to build the kingdom. And I know this has been a bit of a downer of a video and it's been depressing making it, but can I say this? We're going to do it with a smile on our faces to annoy all of the right people. Hey freaking man, I feel better
now. Join us next week for Last Call with BJ Edwards.